Have you ever stopped to think that there exists a staircase in the middle of the American desert that defies absolutely everything modern engineering knows about wooden structures? Well, yes, and this is not just any story. It's the kind of mystery that makes scientists scratch their heads and skeptics completely change their minds after seeing it with their own eyes. We're talking about a construction that simply shouldn't exist, at least not in the way it exists, and that has been standing for over a century and a half, making people from all over the world question the limits of what is humanly possible. Before I continue, I need you to understand something fundamental. What I am about to tell you now is not an urban legend. It's not religious exaggeration, and it's certainly not a conspiracy theory. We're talking about a physical structure, real, that you can visit today if you want, and that has already been analyzed by dozens of specialists over the decades. And the more they study it, the more questions arise. So if you think you've seen it all in this life, prepare to rethink your certainties, because this story will leave you speechless. It all began in a small city that few people know about, but that holds impressive historical treasures. Santa Fe, located in the state of New Mexico, in the United States, is one of those cities where the past seems to be alive on every corner. The old buildings tell stories of colonization, of unshakable faith, and of people who faced the most merciless desert on the American continent, armed only with their beliefs and determination. And it was exactly in this setting that one of the greatest architectural enigmas of modern history emerged, a mystery that to this day no one has been able to fully explain. We were in the mighty 1970s, a time when the Wild West was still wild, and opportunities for women were practically none. In this unlikely context, a group of nuns known as the Sisters of Loretto decided to do something revolutionary: build a school for girls in the middle of inhospitable territory. These extraordinary women were not afraid of challenges, and with a determination that would impress any modern entrepreneur, they managed to erect not only a school, but also a chapel that rivaled in beauty the most famous European cathedrals. The design of this chapel was entrusted to renowned architects of the time, professionals who had experience in creating true works of art in stone and wood. They drew inspiration from the neo-Gothic style, the very same one that produced the magnificent medieval cathedrals of Europe, with their pointed towers and colored stained glass windows that transform sunlight into spectacles of colors. The stained glass windows of the Loretto Chapel, by the way, were imported directly from Europe, crossing oceans to adorn that small temple lost in the American desert. Every detail was designed to elevate the souls of the people who entered there, creating an atmosphere of reverence and peace. But this is where the story begins to get truly interesting, because even the best professionals make mistakes, and the mistake made at the Loretto Chapel was absolutely monumental. When the construction was finally completed, and the nuns could admire their new chapel in all its glory, they noticed something that froze their hearts. There was absolutely no safe way to access the choir loft, that elevated space where traditionally singers position themselves during religious ceremonies. The choir was there, majestic, more than 6 meters high, but it was completely inaccessible. Imagine the desperate situation of these women. They had invested years of work, scarce resources, and all their faith in that construction, and now they discovered that a fundamental part of the chapel was useless. The space available on the ground floor was so limited that a conventional staircase simply wouldn't fit there. A straight staircase would occupy practically the entire nave of the chapel, completely destroying the harmony of the environment. And to make matters even worse, the main architect of the project had died, taking with him any possible solution he might have imagined. The remaining options were all terrible. A ladder was too dangerous, especially considering that the nuns wore long habits that could easily get tangled in the rungs. An external staircase would destroy the aesthetics of the chapel and expose the sisters to the harsh elements of the desert. And simply giving up on the choir would mean accepting that that entire area of the chapel would be eternally unused. There seemed to be no way out, no humanly possible solution for that apparently unsolvable problem. It was then that the Sisters of Loretto did what they always did when they faced obstacles that seemed greater than their strength. They knelt down and prayed. They began a novena dedicated to Saint Joseph, the carpenter of Nazareth, the man God chose to be the earthly father of Jesus Christ, and who is traditionally venerated as the patron saint of carpenters and manual workers. For 9 consecutive days, the nuns pleaded for the intercession of that saint, asking him to send someone capable of solving their impossible problem. And here, my friend, is where this story stops being just interesting and becomes absolutely extraordinary. Because on the 9th day of the novena, exactly when the prayers were coming to an end, a stranger knocked on the door of the chapel. He was a man of simple appearance, dressed modestly, who carried with him only a small toolbox. He introduced himself as a carpenter, and said he had heard about the sisters' problem and was there to help. His only condition was peculiar. He needed to work in complete isolation, with the doors of the chapel closed to any visitors. The nuns, who had just spent 9 days asking for exactly this, didn't hesitate for a single second. They accepted the mysterious carpenter's proposal and gave him full access to the chapel. What happened in the following 3 months remains one of the greatest mysteries in American history. The man worked alone, in absolute silence, and the sisters could never find him when they entered the chapel for their regular prayers. It was as if he appeared and disappeared at will, always avoiding any direct contact with the religious women. And then, after approximately 90 days of solitary work, the carpenter simply vanished. He didn't warn anyone, didn't say goodbye, didn't leave any address or form of contact. And most impressive of all, he charged absolutely nothing for the service. The sisters were desperate to find him, not only to thank him, but also to pay him for the extraordinary work he had done. They placed ads in local newspapers, asked at every tool store in the region, investigated every inn and guest house in the city. Nothing. The man had disappeared as if he had never existed. But what he left behind forever changed the history of that small chapel in the desert. When the sisters finally entered the space where the carpenter had worked, they encountered something that defied all logic and understanding. An absolutely perfect spiral staircase, gracefully rising to the choir as if it were floating in the air. It was a breathtaking sight, a work of art in wood that seemed to have been created by divine hands. And for those women of unshakable faith, the conclusion was inevitable. Saint Joseph himself had descended from heaven to answer their prayers. Now, let's talk about why this staircase continues to fascinate engineers, architects, and scientists more than 150 years after its construction. Because the technical mysteries involved are as impressive as the story of its origin. The first thing any specialist notices when examining the Loretto staircase is the complete absence of a central support pillar. In any conventional helical staircase, especially one built entirely of wood in the 19th century, this central pillar is absolutely indispensable. It is what supports the weight of the steps, distributes the forces, and ensures that the structure doesn't collapse under the weight of the people using it. The Loretto staircase simply ignores this fundamental rule of engineering. It is what specialists call a self-supporting structure, which means that all its weight is distributed in such an ingenious way that it manages to support itself. The weight is transferred to the first step, which rests firmly on the chapel floor, and to the upper fixing point, where the staircase connects to the mezzanine of the choir. This distribution of forces is so sophisticated that it makes the staircase appear to literally float in space, defying gravity in a way that still today impresses the most experienced structural engineers. The geometry of the staircase is another element that leaves specialists astonished. It rises almost 7 meters in height, making 2 complete turns of 360 degrees each, forming a helix of impressive mathematical perfection. The curvature is absolutely constant along its entire length, without any irregularity or variation. To understand how difficult this is, imagine trying to cut dozens of pieces of wood in perfect curves, using only hand tools from the 19th century, and then fitting them together to form a spiral without any defect. It's the kind of precision that even with modern technology would be extremely challenging to achieve. And this perfection is not just an aesthetic matter, although the beauty of the staircase is undeniable. The impeccable geometry is fundamental to the structural integrity of the entire construction. Any irregularity in the curvature would create points of uneven tension, which over time would cause cracks and eventually the collapse of the structure. The fact that the staircase has remained intact and functional for so many decades is irrefutable proof of the perfection of its construction. There is a detail that the most devout consider especially significant, and that adds an extra layer of mystery to this entire story. The staircase has exactly 33 steps. For those who don't know, 33 is the age Jesus Christ was when he was crucified, according to Christian tradition. Coincidence? Perhaps. But it's the kind of coincidence that makes people stop and think, especially when combined with all the other inexplicable elements of this story. The construction technique used is another aspect that continues to intrigue specialists. The staircase was built entirely without the use of metal nails or any type of glue or adhesive. The entire structure is held together exclusively by a complex system of wooden joints and pegs, small cylindrical pieces of wood that function as pins, connecting the different parts of the structure. Each of the 33 steps was meticulously fitted into the curved side stringers, those pieces that form the outer spiral of the staircase, creating a unit so solid that it appears to have been carved from a single block of wood. This technique, known as joinery, is one of the oldest and most respected forms of working with wood, but also one of the most difficult to master. It requires not only exceptional manual skill, but also a deep understanding of the properties of wood, of how it behaves under different conditions of temperature and humidity, and of how forces are distributed along a complex structure. Doing this in a simple form would already be impressive. Doing it in a 2-turn helix is almost unbelievable. The durability of the staircase is perhaps the most compelling proof of the perfection of its construction. For almost a century, the staircase was used daily by the Sisters of Loretto and by the students of the Academy. Hundreds of thousands of steps went up and down those treads over the decades, and the structure remained solid and reliable. Any weakness or imperfection would have been quickly exposed by this intensive use. But the staircase magnificently withstood the test of time. And then we come to one of the most intriguing mysteries of all. the origin of the wood used in the construction. Scientific studies conducted over the years have managed to identify the material as a type of spruce belonging to the genus Picea, a family of conifers known for its strength and flexibility. The problem is that this specific species of wood is not found anywhere near Santa Fe or New Mexico. In fact, the most similar varieties are found in distant regions of the northern hemisphere, thousands of kilometers away. Some more recent analyses suggest something even more extraordinary. The type of spruce used in the staircase has characteristics that bring it close to varieties found in the Middle East, the same region where Joseph of Nazareth lived, the carpenter whom Christian tradition venerates as the earthly father of Jesus. Of course, this information alone doesn't prove anything supernatural, but it adds another layer of mystery to a story already full of inexplicable elements. How did an unknown carpenter, working alone in a small city in the American desert in the 19th century, gain access to such a rare and distant wood? Over the years, the staircase underwent some modifications that are important to mention to maintain the honesty of this narrative. Skeptics frequently point to a small L-shaped metal bracket that today connects the side of the staircase to one of the chapel's columns. This bracket was not part of the original construction. It was added decades later as a precautionary measure due to increased vehicle traffic on the street adjacent to the chapel. The vibrations caused by automobiles created concern about the stability of the structure, and the bracket was installed as an extra safety guarantee. Ironically, many specialists believe that this bracket may have caused more harm than good. The original staircase was designed to have a certain natural flexibility, allowing it to absorb small stresses and movements without suffering damage. The rigid metal bracket prevents this flexibility, creating stress points that may have contributed to some small cracks in the wood over the years. It's as if the modern intervention had harmed the perfection of the original construction. The handrail we see today on the staircase was also a later addition, installed to provide more safety for the nuns who used the staircase daily. The original structure was even more impressive than what we see today. It was a pure spiral, completely open, without any lateral support. Imagine climbing almost 7 meters in height on a staircase that seems to float in the air, without a handrail to hold on to, using only your faith that the structure wouldn't collapse under your feet. The first sisters who used the staircase must have needed extraordinary courage. The history of the Loretto Chapel and its miraculous staircase eventually reached a point of transition. The Loretto Academy, the school for girls that had been the original reason for the construction of the chapel, closed its activities after more than a century of operation. The chapel was deconsecrated, meaning it ceased to be officially a place of Catholic worship, and became private property. Today it functions as a museum, and also as an extremely popular venue for wedding ceremonies, attracting approximately 250,000 visitors every year. To preserve this unique relic for future generations, public access to the staircase has been prohibited. No one can climb or descend those 33 mysterious steps anymore, but this doesn't diminish the power of its presence in any way. Visitors can admire the staircase up close, photograph it from all angles, and many report feeling a special energy when they are in its proximity. For the faithful, it's the energy of divine intercession. For skeptics, it's just the impression caused by an extraordinary work of art. Whatever the interpretation, no one leaves there indifferent. So what can we conclude from all this? The truth is that, after more than 150 years, we still don't have definitive answers to the mysteries of the Loretto staircase. We don't know for certain who the mysterious carpenter was who built it. We don't know where the exotic wood he used came from. We don't know how he managed to create such a perfect structure with such limited tools. And we don't know why he disappeared without leaving a trace. What we do know is that this staircase exists, that it defies conventional explanations, and that it continues to inspire millions of people around the world. For devotees of Saint Joseph, it is tangible proof that the saints intercede for us and that God hears the prayers of his children. For lovers of architecture and engineering, it is a fascinating puzzle that still awaits a solution. And for all of us, it is a reminder that the world still holds mysteries that science cannot fully explain. If this story touched your heart or awakened your curiosity, I have a request to make. Share this text with someone who needs to hear a story of faith and mystery. Tag that friend who loves inexplicable enigmas. Send it to that family member who has devotion to Saint Joseph, or simply keep this story for yourself as a reminder that the extraordinary still exists in this world. And if you ever have the opportunity to visit Santa Fe someday, don't miss the chance to personally see this marvel that has been defying logic for more than a century and a half. The story of the Sisters of Loretto and their miraculous staircase teaches us something profound about the nature of faith and human hope. When we face problems that seem to have no solution, when all doors seem closed and all options exhausted, there is always the possibility of something unexpected happening. Those nuns in the New Mexico desert had no logical reason to believe that their problem would be solved, but they chose to believe anyway. And somehow, in a way we still can't fully explain, their faith was rewarded. Whether you are a religious person or not, there is a universal message in this story worth considering. The world is much more mysterious and surprising than our scientific models can capture. There are phenomena that defy explanation, coincidences that seem too significant to be just chance, and events that make us question the limits of what we consider possible. The Loretto staircase is one of these phenomena, a physical structure that invites us to contemplate mystery and to keep our minds open to possibilities that go beyond the ordinary. And so, the staircase remains there, in silence, spiraling upward toward the Santa Fe sky. It doesn't need words to tell its story. Its very existence is an eloquent testimony to something extraordinary. Every perfect curve, every meticulously fitted step, every fiber of that mysterious wood speaks of a craftsmanship that transcends the common. And as long as it continues to stand defying gravity and human understanding, it will continue to be an invitation for all of us to look beyond the visible and consider the possibility that there are forces at work in this world that we have not yet fully understood. Thank you for watching this video. Leave your like and subscribe to the Living Hope channel on YouTube. Activate notifications by clicking on the bell to receive other publications.